Thank you. Squeeze. Right. Ready? Turn. 1 second, my Excel is being slow. I'm good. Great.
Journalistic freedom is under attack by increasing subpoena usage. Current state legislation is inadequate. Facet 3. Journalistic state jurisdiction is subpoenaed to testify in court by government. Sudden optics deeply word protected whistleblowers will be less likely to come forward with important info about misconduct made. Statute written decades ago no longer adequate. State legislation provide important protection by updating show laws. Take into account online journal subpoena may not be going away soon. Status quo Patrick causes uncertainty, which was reporting necessary. 5 big cuts of Patrick show laws across the states, increasing nationalization media companies and uncertainty as to the form in which litigation might rest. Future reported show media conglomerates quickly as seen as subpoenaed. The mass policy is devastating to the role of journalists in the knowledge of the intricacies of the law that leads to expensive and time-consuming puzzle. Reporters observe before talking about sources in different areas of the country. If the law were uniform, users does not face these costs. Failure to update show laws fraud definition creates gaps in court protection due to strict court interpretation. Smith and 13. Judges avoid interpreting a statute means something other than what a legislator intended. Statute interrogation. The common law must be construed strictly where a legislature took the time today. Some forth immediately meant to exclude other state courts repeatedly did not protect journalists because of the holes in statute or linked litigation has risen because the older statute now been updated. The court explained that newspapers to mean newspaper and magazine district interpretation not accepted by the rule of law because they're practical incentive to draft carefully word to cover person language feature shield laws to amend older statute not containing language flexible enough to accommodate the internet. And successful leftist organizing is always answered by increased power subpoenas and anti-establishment reported. It's a strategy application meant to silence the masses. Fargo 10. Agnew began to fully challenge the press. The library wise journalists began to report rising subpoenas for the confidential sources in organizing leading anti-government protest subpoenas issued to journalists nationwide average about 1.5 a year until the late 1960s. Road 75, the government wanted information about what product groups were planning sources and product groups so reports they would no longer speak specifically. Whistleblowers are key to break the power of the state Zhang. In 18, occupation digital grid is crucial fee are to break the power of the state and capital. We need a narrow strike force of whistleblowers to take over the digital grid and rip it from corporations, state agencies to WikiLeaks, which just the beginning. Our motto should be led 100 of WikiLeaks plus in the panic and fear with which those in power reacted to Assange's proof that such an activity hits the nerve, and journalism checks a lot of structural violence. YB13. Anyone who sought to examine journal success and the substantial civic impacts of investigation not helping be impressed by the vital role the press to make for accounting were not for news more than a million workers in Chinese factories got 25% raises, working condition capacity, improved computer companies rethink overseas supplies. Congress opened an investigation, Senate revived toxic chemical reform legislation. California moved to revamp rules. EPA moved to increase state press. Boy Scouts to launch a conference to review investigation. Walmart to radically overhaul prodigal states and spark reform from disclosure requirements to panels for ethics from thus a plan the 50 states of the United States ought to establish the absolute right for those engaging in the process of reporting to protect the identity of confidential sources. New process-based definition of reporters key to incorporating new media in the UK proves it's feasible. Flanagan 5. The journalist crossing test is valuable in work when it can be implemented practically according to showing of adherence to a code of journalistic professionalism compliance evinces procedural steps to ensure that the facts communicated were of great validity. The UK journalist crossing test in practice in the DPA. These includes involving more participative media that the internet are likely to use this approach would accord flexibility that the US could readily adapt. Now the method framing reject the simplistic understanding that liberalism as an all-pervasive force default to particularity. Papa 17. Serious study has to be specific to time and place as possible. Quest where theoretical barometers good and evil may be futile, since the present ideological function of a category was not always determined by past use or original purpose. The distinction created to press may play different functions, different social contexts. Liberalism not always function to the same degree, nor always will every native thought can become an ideological oppression. Views are vulnerable to inaction, insensitivity. If domination is institutional, local diagnosis and remedies must be local. Resist the temptation to rely on lazy theoretical barometers. They must provide a basis of being critical of ideas beyond. They are Western difference, not a Western concept of presence inside between good and evil. Because intelligent, discriminative judgment, the center versus periphery framework is the susceptible to exploding into simplistic view that all evil comes from liberalism. The relationship with the West sounds like a subtle manipulative. Prior question will never be fully settled. Must take action even with uncertainty. Crocker 99. All debates continue. It's important we proceed with analysis of material. This holds for all theorists or to deter the goal of extending moral including present climate, epistemological uncertainty, important political uncertainty. The balance cannot afford to wait for medical question to be answered, nor can we wait for critical alternative order to be before an agenda to be kicked here. Nor do we have before us a question which comes first, sorting out meta-theoretical issues, working out a credible institution vision. The two can be pursued together, and the imagination. Protest pedagogy does not create change. Instead, it produces new modes of trauma that reinforce violent behaviors, causing over-identification with particularities of our identities that overcome social struggles and destroy the possibility for sympathy, reassurance. 6. Pedagogy that centers on utterance to the students of alienation is discourse and historic reinforcement can disempower at least students invested identity exclusively in some alternate categories, socially destructive forms of identity politics pit different groups in competition recognition great effective identification will result in the impression that feelings can become a demand for new master provided by subjects. Puts we are back on the grounds of authoritarian pedagogy. Students themselves appear to embody the master's university teachers to respond for with oppositional pedagogy fans and sponsored by further threatening damage to identities despite this absurd difference. Others tend to be much like ourselves. We imagine them as being fundamentally humane, merely to express sympathy for those individuals when racism, sexism, homophobia, or racism are criticized. Students whose identity not incorporate these qualities being trained to ignore these qualities within their own selves, preventing the other's traumatization, refusal, or recognition reinforces their macho denial feelings of vulnerability that presents further impotence, violent behavior, demonizing the devil makes a devil more diabolical, and political analysis and stress beyond the classroom college violent conservative like Trump, forsaking compromise is a dangerous academic luxury. Claudio in 16. You'll find few Trump supporters among the left-wing professional intellectual academic professors offer stringent criticism but fail to offer viable all-state promoted announcements that set the stage for moves that reject a reform actions are mostly gadflies merely offer threats to rotate those who do for an ultra-proposed one so vague or divorced from reality may as well be proposing nothing just to express hopeless. They reject gradual change downloads threats in the classroom and jurors at op-ed pages Arcadia and the public trades Trump supporter told behavior had disasters in neoconservative and neoliberalism. The Trump's an alternative academic nihilists and Trump's are in agreement the system is broken. Liberals who believe in working towards change or weak to territory complied about impossibility to change democracy dominated by at least because we out a Trump political leader willing to kill to save as this crisis unfolds. We need the influential use intellectual memory in negation. Although academics of the luxury of imagining a completely different world, the rest have to figure out what to do with the one we have. Critique of peaceful reforms, wrong Delgado 13. The right to minimize coercion of enormous importance is critique of peaceful reform is imperialistic and wrong. Minorities know occasional court victories do not mean the promised land is at hand. The critique is imperialistic in that it tells minorities how they should interpret an event. A court order directing housing to disburse funds for heat may postpone the revolution or not. In the meantime, the order keeps poor families warm. That may mean more to them than the academic. It smacks of paternalism to assert the possibility of revolution, not with the certainty of heat. Now, incremental changes may bring revolutionary changes closer. Not all small reforms include complacency, somewhat the appetite for combat the family tendency to eating.
Okay, ready? What is protest pedagogy?
Protest pedagogy is the idea that in debate or in educational settings, we should be sort of like learning about the vulnerable sides of our identity.
Right, so if protest pedagogy is bad, why is the app good to expose the wrongdoings of the state?
Because it's not centered on this kind of idea that we should evaluate our victimized identities. Instead, we should engage in macro-political
Wait, then what does the
changes.
app do in the context of macro-political change? The app is about exposing the ways in which the state is bad. What does that result in after?
I mean, that's the whole advantage the app solves whistleblowing.
Wait, so you expose the ways that the state performs insidious operations. What happens next?
And then that forces the state to change. Or why do you have insights?
Why does the state change?
Because we literally proved that they are like secret.
Point me to a line of
or why do you have insights multiple computers? For example, investigative journalism has led to workers' rights reform. For example, in Chinese factories, they got 25% raises, even though they had like horrible.
What does that have to do with a policy passed by the 50 states of the United States?
Okay, well, there's obviously more examples. For example, the California moved to revamp their sort of chemical reform rules, which solves sort of structural problems
Wait.
regarding the use of these kinds of pests.
How did that resolve structural violence?
Because the use of chemicals, like bad toxic chemicals with bad EFs.
Wait, in the context of who? Like your
In the
evidence?
context of
You talk about structural violence in the context of minoritized bodies. Where can you read me a line about why that California law about chemicals being used was like applied to, like, for instance?
I think the point is that there are like so many different ways whistleblowing can be effective. For example,
Wait, I want to know the internal link to resolving structural violence. What is
chemical. So the chemical reform legislation. For example, if we use chemicals, then probably
that? No. Point me to a line of the app that talks about that in the context of some minoritized bodies.
minoritized bodies.
Right, that's what your last piece of, like, that's
Like if our crops die, then poor people don't have access to food. That's probably bad.
where is that in the one you see?
That's just how it works.
No, I want
Are you
to
going to argue
that's
that
fine.
toxic
No,
chemicals are good?
that's fine. Let's talk about this papa's evidence. What is a simplistic understanding?
It's the idea that all sort of ideas from the West.
Sorry,
are
actually, what is
related to
particularity?
bad. Particularity says that rather than that totalizing view, we accept that we have to evaluate every norm specifically and evaluate whether it's good or bad, because the sort of historical, like, things are just not bad just because they are sort of associated with historical wrongs. Instead, you get to prove, for example, that the specific policy.
Okay, that's fine. Let's talk. Actually, I want to talk about this Brasher evidence again. Will you defend every part of the YAC scholarship?
What does that mean? I mean, I read an F. I will defend.
Will you defend every single part of the YAC performance?
I think that's an untenable interpretation because
Why?
our authors have so many different things, and I can't be held culpable for like.
Why can't you
every
be held culpable
problematic
for
thing.
introducing it into the round?
I mean, like, I'm not gonna. I think like the stuff that I read, I will be held culpable for. But not
Okay, cool.
stuff.
That's fine. Starting prep. What is the discourse of the hysteria?
That's a social link where the hysteric is a sort of when you question the master. Also, it's not like a sort of medical thing. It's just like a sort of thing about language.
That's fine. Okay. Setting up the draw. It's one-off case.
London case.
Case will start with the method / under the stuff. It should have been. Did everyone get it? Everyone good? Alright, starting time.
The glorification of calls for freedom and rights are a humanist call for differentiation that places black poor bodies in spaces of non-existent existence. The cartographic process civil society uses to map bodies, actions, ethics, and meaning itself produces the impossibility of mapping the black poor body. Humanist categories are articulate difference among bodies are produced in relation to differentiating violence that does not apply to the fungible commodity that is blackness. The black poor body is incommunicable in civil society, problematizing their notions of being and legibility in journalism because black poor flesh is denied symbolic existence. Warren 17. Markers such as women, child, man, transgender create problems when justified with blackness. Blackness is fungible commodity. Is associated with this realm of difference. You acknowledge the difference that contributing to to scene brutality that targets particular being when incorrectly situated in the realm of human difference that assumes him, but without a marker, the difference we are announced with the rental more vulnerable to certain violence and other socially position as black. We are unable to difference in particular because humanism plays uses property and ensure that and since the black is a human, it cannot claim difference in particular as a feature of existing humanism creates a double line with emotion. Afro-Muslim analysis proceeds, but the procedures unable to conceptualize what is surplus to anti-blackness of the human coheres their identity in contradiction to the black body, which constructs ontology as a vehicle of violence itself. The incommunicability of blackness is a paradox. The app must be forced to confront the attempt to project the status of a human onto bodies who can never become is an anti-black project of whitewashing the subject that reduces blackness to the that their conception of agency itself, which relies on self-reflection and introspection and being able to speak, relies on the supremacy of man. Warren 17. To be humanist here, our endless differentiation difference is foundation on which man emerges unique to establish unique man also establish another grounds as a paradigm of ontology until securing the self against the ontological self-fixing other and ulterior constantly negotiating is boundary with social capacity. Human is a repulse for advanced practice and technology crystallized over time. Difference is a result of this while the process humanism plus man is highest form of being ontological supremacy is about lots of preconditioned man exists in himself for himself. No one else can exist his existence is absolutely individual, can be communicated with others, nor can be used by others. Communicability, manifest capacity for self-reflection, self-possession, and returning to self-determination from himself from within. Ontology is valid information, valuable individuality, characteristic humanity, blackness is the inviolable essence of humans with individuality. Community with racial privilege, to eliminate differentiating violence without eliminating the human. The impact is overkill. The violence to seize the logic of utility, push bodies that exist in the role of violence, thus to confront the terror of overkill. Warren 17. The aggressor continues to mutilate the body post-mortem. This surplus violence pushes squares backward out of time, that which comes before. Brutality must continue past the past and outside norms until left and dead beyond. Utility means a necessity and survival impossible. Objective is surplus violence and cognitive failure. Just follow such a failure where failures are just necessity. Traditional sacrifice one close to achieving the unachievable. The success of violence is impossible existentially. One can never learn irrational to resolve an irrational dilemma, especially when these depend on destructive irrational. This is any solution to this problem would also have to reside beyond the normal times of left and death and outside reason itself overkills wants to sustain society without it. The bourgeoisie in this institution sees his particular overkills wants its will to do wants and nothingness, and the alternative is thus to affirm the ballroom as a counterpublic. The ballroom space affirms community values outside of civil society, negotiates between humanism and blackness and enacting cultural spiritual renewal. These fundamental performances allow for counter-hegemonic gender expressions and social adaptations, at least in new survival strategies. Bailey 13. Ritual is even that draws the community together, which reaffirms and highlights the connection between man and God and places space to ensure the preservation of way of life and bring the community together and act politics, social culture, and spiritual rituals are transformed in the sense that they expose the contradiction of openness of culture. Rituals performs a constituent infectious support black performs and diminishes from a continuous history of African diaspora community, defined prices back LGBT people face from black bars and clubs and racism, the gay white gay ones. Runways can be constructed, for example, the runway that professional models use. The runways of cyber recognition and affirmation are confirmed. It's also a space in which competition, critique, are vigorously enacted, space in the social dynamics to play out during the ball or hierarchical yet flexible and work to reinforce the social organization of ballroom culture. Echoing another common element of performance tradition, African dance with the circle appears often in ballroom performance. These spatial arrangements that are codified with the ballroom culture and implemented in balls. Now, first on case, first on the method. First is their halls making good arguments coming out of the populist evidence. Is that first is one in political structure. Just that they're saying good arguments assume that the black body has access to policy doesn't answer the critique. The political discourse can never account for the structural blackness because it can articulate the claims of the non-human choose respectability. Politics is that you force invaders to see through the lens of white supremacy, which reproduces anti-blackness. It crushes dissent and forces black bodies to act the way that white supremacy wants them to. Legitimizing our politics to the state through state action. This is that prevents any possibility of change. Now, on the question of particularity, the populist evidence, one is the only thing that articulates the particularity of black war violence, which is the reason that's why you should vote negative insofar as on the question of weighing. This is not a question of whether or not this is not an offense within. They just have to prove that the 1AC particularity is necessarily is particularly better on the context of black war violence, which is the reason that's why they don't get access to that. But also, we're going to answer black role experimentation because one is a cruel optimism is that the determined practice is card is that we will be motivated to engage in politics. But if we indicate them, we just have to that just links us into a psychological mindset, which we constantly have to have faith in the state to change the for future and say reproducing black and this politics of affirming progress to come nationalist and anti-black violence and 2 points absent role experimentation or micropolitical disruption. You are complete engagement with politics with no focus on individual survival strategies, means even if the argument is true, you don't get access to it. Now the Cochrane evidence, one is that it doesn't apply to the critique. We don't have to win the case of our question engaging politics. The argument is that we should never engage in politics, but also that the 1NC alternative is a good but also two is that the 1NC alternative still a strategy that we can use, and 3 is that if I'm with you, we are epistemologically uncertain about anything politics and politics and civil society is bad, and you should withdraw any affirmation of it. Not the protest pedagogy arguments. One is that doesn't apply to the critiques causes the conscious of identity politics causes trauma identification with the case in a form of identity politics. Identity is only applicable to the human who has a subjective shift in and out of identity. However, blackness is at the position of structural antagonism. Humanism is inevitable. Blackness can never be fully recognized by whiteness because of the structure of society, the loss in blackness. 3 point is no impact. That's the question why we care about white sympathy, which we definitely don't. White sympathy is always based on the libidinal conception of blackness, which positions whiteness always power based against blackness. White master consumes the black slave narrative and the Claudio evidence. One is that cruel optimism. One is a cruel optimism. Decide that this presumes that if we keep working in politics, suddenly the government will stop being anti-black, which will create psychological monsters. Always would prevent engagement in any strategy that actually resolve these, which is the reason why you prefer the ball, but also choose victim blame. This is putting the blame on and burden on the victim of political violence to solve anti-blackness, which is morally and repugnant, allows whiteness to put in culpability, but also the Delgado evidence. One is that we don't talk about no arguments about how we know and understand why violence occurs, which is that's what we want to see. So comes first, but in order to resolve that violence, but also see that it's a question of how the reform is justified, not a question whether or not the reform is good in the consequences of it. And now 3 is that they still have to justify the acts as a good form of piecemeal reform in the context of the critique, which means that this is not obvious for them anyway. Now the actual we're going to do some link analysis on the context of the case. Where first is that the term of the package, the acts of being able to solve workers' conditions by checking corporations. There will be evidence as quote more than a million workers at Chinese factories that make apples, iPhones, and iPads got 25% raises their working conditions vastly improved. And but this is linked to the case because workers' conditions can improve by giving them rights and getting material things that are the subject. That doesn't change the condition that objects upon which they are working, which is slave. Their understanding of structural violence is also a huge link to the critique. Our argument is that their notion of violence relies on humanism to understand the way we see cohere identity process to determine what isn't violence is fractures around the black body. It's not articulate through as well as differentiate. Also, just proves that they can never understand the violence that occurs to the black body, which means they get no case application of the case patient until they are to articulate that their theory of power is better than the offense. First is that no internal link between journalism and corporations like Walmart and Apple actually changing force them to justify that before they get office on Fastly. One is just about investigating journalism hard. They talk about in Turner Woodley at the bottom of the image about media journalism because they can't solve the impact, but also too on Turner is that this is not needing to read the evidence. It's about broadcast on YouTube, personal blogs, and how that can expose people. One source don't need to give reporters information to is that social movements and stats quo like anonymous are still unknown to reporters until you can make a fake account and use this. On Weeby, one is that no internal solvency since this is why what is happening in the status quo, so there's nowhere for the advocacy. 2 is rules of solvency. We no longer question Apple and Walmart because they can still treat their workers however they want, and there's no international check on so there's no reason the minute change in minute change in the US is enough to overcome harms in other areas in the world. And 3 is this hard has nothing to do with anonymity. Status quo solves this 100%. The GJ card is the only thing that they have office on. The argument is that this does not answer the incommunicability of blackness, but also all the arguments that would be applied.
Ready? Mm-hmm. What is humanism?
The idea that there is our argument is that in order to define what is human, there needs to be a constitutive outside that it is relegated upon what it means to not be human is relegated upon. Our argument is that it's always blackness.
Okay, so why does the app invest in any notion of the human?
Multiple reasons. The first thing is that your understanding of structural violence as something that is intersectional is bad in the context of the way that it fractures around the way that the black body experiences differentiating violence. Because our argument is that there is
how does your alternative deal with that problem?
Right, our argument is that in the alternative is that we negotiate between humanism and anti-blackness to understand the violence that occurs to a body that is located in both.
How do you negotiate?
Right, the cultural, spiritual performances that were enacted in the ballroom enabled a form of performativity that was not controlled by whiteness or controlled by humanism. That also enabled an analysis of the ways in which violence occurs and specific strategies in which to resolve that violence. Sorry?
Is all the floating day?
No.
Okay, how does the alternative engage in... Or you say you don't engage in political structures, and how do you deal with people like Zhang or people like you to
Sure. Our argument one is the alternative is... multiple arguments. One is that is... I think there's multiple arguments that 2 and I will make. I could go through every single one, but the critique would functionally non-unique that. Second is that the alternative would probably prove that survival strategies are good in the context of being able to know that balance. Third is that it doesn't...
Can you repeat survival strategies to know that balance? So once
right.
you know that balance, how do you...
Right, so the alternative about ballroom culture is very specific in the context of how ballrooms were spaces in which people performed and enacted forms of disidentification in which they were able to articulate different ways to exist outside the world that was then motivated, that was then used... Sorry?
What is the world?
Outside the ballroom is... I mean, it's not an epistemological question. It's just like a distinction I'm making between the ballroom and outside the ballroom.
Cool. Let's go to... how do you get... What is a warrant for the spiritual impact? Your evidence cites one example.
Sure. 47 states in the United States still say the gay and trans panic defense is a legal is legal.
How does the alternative change that?
Right. No. First, do you want me to explain overkill or do you want me? Okay. So our argument is that for instance, in which the instance in which a queer person is mutilated and violated goes beyond normative times of life, because the idea is that if the first few stab wounds kill them, then what do the remaining 50 signify, and why did those occur? That is an irrational form of violence that pushes them beyond death, which proves and explains why overkill is the process of violence that occurs to that body, because it is a process of pushing them beyond what is already nothing. The alternative is a way to negotiate how that violence occurs, why that violence occurs, and how we can resolve that violence through specific disidentification.
What is that negotiating to?
It allows us to understand that violence, negotiate between the. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. I have 213. I'll send it off. Order is case starting with the advantage, then the method, then the care.
Wait, can you repeat that one more time? Case and K?
Yeah, case five. Everyone good?
Sorry.
Yeah, so a lot of structural violence. They have zero cards on the specific policy that we've read are conceded or necessary evidence says that the lack of uniform state laws leads to a chilling effect. YB evidence materializes that impact. It says that the investigative journalism of VF is necessary to solve. They read the corporation's part for us empirically. Investigative journalism has led to things like corporate reform, but the point is that even if there is some journalism now there is a massive chilling effect. He said most of it is not coming forward. Now the method takes composite evidence should bring a decision. All the case claims about humanism and liberalism are way too totalizing. You have to dispute why the staff-specific deployment of it is bad. Even if there's no political structure, like even if there's no access, the way you would respond to that is by trying to get access to engage with the state. There's no respectability politics. It said it doesn't force anyone to get engaged in the state. Just that it is a contingent institution that can be pressured. The quality evidence. I'm going for this too. Their alternative of never engaging in politics, which is a quote from the 1NC, is repugnant because it means that they have zero explanation to how they can possibly deal with people like Trump or other populist leaders who are extremely way more racist than the affirmative. It's not victim blaming. You're way more repugnant because you don't even care about violence in the first place. It's not co-optimism either. Cornell and C16. Co-optimism, we would answer this simply. There's surely nothing cooler than to say that there's no way out of the horrific and brutal exploitation events. Capitalism, the majority of wars, public conditions, dire property targeting, or extinction, raising the death winner amounts to the same thing. Betting oneself to depending on the species of the planet. We have no possible life. Is not such a big deal, and certainly not an act of post-humanist resistance. Resistance. Now the criticism. Further, the king has to dispute that the consequences of the plan are good. My principles inherently sound to my plan, so it makes no sense to separate them. One is fairness, and they can indict any representation or discursive practice which moves to one to see. Second is clash. The state is inevitable, and learning how to use it is good, but their idea, that was about. Third is narcissism, to say that the sort of skills that we get don't matter, ignores the importance of institutional engagement for alleviating violence. That means their survival strategy is only accessible to the most economically privileged people. Their role of the ballot is arbitrary and self-serving. The sole purpose of your ballot is to convey to tab room who want counter. Role of the ballot is to determine whether the has true that my folks via ballot policy is best. Permutation do both double one. Either the alternative is sufficient to overcome the link or is not strong enough to overcome the status quo. There's no reason why the affirmative necessarily investing these same things. Now the humanism debate, they rely on the same values. Yeah, 50-50 as flawed. It's never kind of ideal. Maybe it seems like a better basis for political action than dumb lucky. But believes that the ideal part of shares of purity is distinctly Western virtuous. Another example of Western superstition we easy enough to find except not Western societies to respect this idea of progressive critics. Fundamental alignment ideals consider the silent backward progressive theorists, no matter how insistently academics rail against alignment, they secretly hold onto the basic values immediately add radical in front of it and trying to destroy the humanist subject fails. Reading 17 policy negativity devoid of any killer vision wants to destroy without giving us a sense of what it should exist. Lead to attitude devoid of meaning, attempts and analysis subjects theoretical dead and also critical battering because theoretical repetition in the Freudian sense of indicating traumatic fiction keeps us from moving to what it might mean to be a subject after the collapse of humanist metaphysics. Assault on subjects that have nothing to do with personal reality. Those who advocated and now they're of their overkill impact, they have zero empirical evidence. Obviously, even if there are certain instances of overkill, the way you respond to that is by engaging in legislative reform, and also our affirmative is not necessarily does not preclude you from engaging the ballroom either, and their ontology claims are wrong because it was presumed epistemic searching. Gordon 15. One problem when we try to look at beings in terms of criticism, we are trying to get a model based on law-like generalization. For the sake of we would push a human into that model. Nor is there ever a human being who is one identity or is different from an anti-black. What the project of race is to create a world that completely anti-black. It's not coffee. If you don't understand how recent this is, what the hell is 500 years problem? Therefore, religious pessimism is based on forecasted knowledge by human beings. So have higher knowledge. We commit the error of forgetting systems are human. If human systems can only exist by actually maintaining them. Every system is incomplete. The system isn't actually closed because the systems are breaking down. We always have somebody who says, don't do that, going to do it. Nobody can do it, but they don't understand that failure started. It's a condition for you. Political work is about doing what is necessary. Understanding it should be done. That card is marked down. Pessimism is counterproductive. Roger 17. Black agency conflates here with their certain hopes are made of flaw. We don't need to really progress enough to think we move towards a more just society. We can be sure no good will come out of the refuse to engage in this work. A lot of faces rest on the idea that we're not finished now. Mark to finish, and they have zero explanation how the ultimate negotiation is able to create any material change.
Hey, thanks, Why is cruel optimism cruel?
Wait, what, sorry?
Why is cruel optimism cruel?
Because the idea that we should just not care about lots of structural violence is bad.
Okay, that's fine. What's the argument in Gordon?
Huh?
What's the argument in Gordon?
So there are arguments about sort of a ritual or the humanist subject, and nor that those things are that relies on epistemic certainty, but there is no such thing as a closed system, which means that you cannot possibly predict those things, and also things are based on the sort of social and material system rather than
Right.
sort of. You need that.
No. Okay, it's going to be the critique, starting with the overview, which you can flow wherever you flow the first piece of warrant evidence, and then case.
Your spawn case?
Sorry?
Did you go spawn case?
I'll start on the, the YV evidence.
So it's the advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What are you doing?
Alright, is everyone ready? Alright, starting time. Now, our argument is that both humanism and pessimism fail to articulate the bonds against a black horror body, which means that all their turns are just terminally non-unique because queerness indicates a humanist category where bonds can differentiate based on identity, which is Gordon's own argument, but the black body cannot exist in humanism since the humanists create an opposition to the other that is always already the black body. This produces a paradox when it comes to describing the violence that black horror bodies face only on decide has explanatory power for how this violence occurs since it negotiates between humanism and pessimism to explain how this violence is both differentiating and undifferentiating. The R argument that was conceded from cases that their intersection approach of understanding blackness and queerness to one another possess this ontological equivalent produces a structural alignment when they become intelligible to one another, i.e. their intersectional understanding of structural violence produces a form of a chain of equivalence wherein they understand the violence that occurs in different bodies based on equivalences, which is the impact turn to their Pappas evidence because they refuse to contextualize the entirety of the act of black power bodies. They've also conceded that our argument in the second piece of warrant evidence about how ontology constitutes a method by which humans appeal for redress, justice, liberty, and freedom. This never works for black power bodies, and continues without, and chattel slavery, Jim Critics, Magistic, opposite, mass incarceration, violence continues without, and Onset refuses to understand blackness through chains of equivalence and instead strategically erases and aligns with terms of difference, i.e. understanding both violence through the humanist moniker of queerness and also the inhuman moniker of the inhuman understanding of blackness to understand to explain this fractional violence against the black power body. Only this can explain the surplus violence that people like Fenric experience as a result of the targets of them being both queer and black, which is the entirety of one and see all of their arguments. You can group the root about the root evidence just talks about like the humanist subject is bad. That is not answering any of your argument. We say the humanist subject is good in some instances, but cannot get into the particularity of black violence. But also the Gordon evidence is we have a couple of responses. One, this evidence is about how homogenizing black experience is bad. That is exactly what they want to see. Criticism is about why we should not homogenize experience because we need to understand that human violence still applies to those bodies, but also choose that this is our argument about why we need to have social material structure. We'll get to that on the conceded alternative, but also three that their arguments that ontology is a bad framing for why violence occurs. Our arguments that ontology itself is a vehicle of violence for black power bodies because there is no way to map them within that structure, which is exactly our argument. There's no reason that's why Gordon applies to the affirmative. Also we're gonna go for the incapacity link coming out of the second piece of warrant evidence about how human capacity itself was parasitic on black incapacity because civil society requires an undifferentiation to set the conditions for the fungible commodity contradiction to which human capacity can emerge, i.e. the 180's understanding of the ways in which workers can articulate some sort of redress, but that doesn't actually articulate the ways in which the object can resist, which is the position of the slave, which means that the 180's just does not get at the fungibility of the captive body, which renders it subject to the projection of feelings, ideas, desires, values of belong to privileged body, which we say cannot communicate, which means journalism fails for those people. This thus reduces the black body to being for the captive, such that this body cannot form subjectivity in turn, cannot desire, but is always desired on. Differentiating violence constitutes the different manifestations of the self, whereas again, number one constitutes an impossible and unlocatable nothingness that does not exist in any matrix of power relation. That turns case because their community building and modes of desiring together through forms of producing journalism to resolve structural violence is necessarily parasitic on black incapacity. For instance, the fetishization and over-sexualization of black women's body for sexual pleasure and but never gratitude or actual love, sexual appreciation. All they do is turn bodies into another headline. The dispossessed body of the enslaved becomes merely a surrogate for the master desires, and anti-blackness fails to encapsulate that balance, which means that one sees understanding of why, which means that one sees turns to actually do anything in the consciousness of critique takes out the permutation because it's a form of incorporation that is overcoded by their desires to capacitate themselves of the fungibility of the core black body and establishes their uniqueness. So we're going to go for the impact argument about overkill. Overkill is an act of ontological violence, as the act of violence itself goes beyond the intention of inflicting violence in an attempt to disappear queerness to restore stability to our heterosexual order. They say no empirical evidence. We'll answer that right here. That's why Christians demonize queerness through the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why the Arizona politicians said to solve AIDS to shoot the queers. Why PTA moms are afraid their kids will catch the gay from queer teachers, and why Trump and Pence created a brand new office to protect doctors from shooting queer friends. Only the one in the articulates how to resolve this. That exists outside of a simple desire to destroy them. Rather, is a libidinal exchange where heterosexual society gains pleasure from the mutilation of queerness. The fact that ancient trans violence is often committed before, after, or during sex along the endless instances of continued mutilation of lifeless bodies indicates a pleasure found in queer mortality. Now, the alternative that was conceded in the last speech of the solvency is that you should vote negative to engage in the ballroom as a counterpart, which is a material and social thing that exists, in which black power bodies can negotiate between humanism and non-existence through deviant modes of production that outlie the ways in which gender is normatively understood through whiteness. This refusal to engage in the political by investment in performance transgression in the underground subverts modern political apparatuses that maintain their power off of our objection, which is the reason that's why the ballroom still spills over to politics. But even if that is not true, we'll get to that on the case flow. We're going to turn on the case flow. Now, the permutation one is that they from civil society, which is a link, which means that there's incoherence. They've also conceded the links from case, which links from case and both of the links at the top of the critique, which means that there's no way they can link out of the entirety of the critique, especially since we have quoted lines from the affirmative, and choose that the permutation itself is an example of why food and filling culture spaces the ability to shop what they're advocating is a strategy privilege that knows how positionalities forever static from our bodies force them to prove why their method is better than ours. The 1AC was not ballroom, does not articulate the way counter-public figure. They say we should engage in the political. We say that is bad. All of our links prove why that is true. Footnoting to that, this creates another replication of whiteness by saying we can do the opposite of the alternative. Footnotes the oppression of the black body, which is what civil society constructs in the first instance, and manifestation of the liberal white Paul speaking that never actually changed. Also, the permutation does not make any sense in the context of why the 1AC is specifically incoherent with the alternative, because we say we make reasons why structural change is not possible as the alternative, which means it's a sequencing question for why the alternative comes first. But also choose that the links that the double bind doesn't make any sense in the context of the alternative, especially since we're not pessimistic, which means that they don't get their Rogers evidence. We just talk about why we talk about reasons for the abs, but now the abs. They have conceded that people can be anonymous. No reason that's why there's any inherency for the affirmative. We have literally cited a reason that's why anonymous, which is a specific group that is hitting to reporters, can still be anonymous. Also, too, is that they have literally conceded that people can still post on online blogs and YouTube, which is the internal link to all of their offense and media journalism, because that's media journalism without having to be outed, which means that there's no inherency for the affirmative. It's not eating because you vote negative, but also, too, is that the only argument they have on cases that is offensive for them is that cruel offense is bad. But no, our argument is that we don't care. Our argument is not that we don't care about that violence. We say that the bad investment of hope and structures that never help, which exacerbates suffering, which is only the alternatives good. The 1AC does not do anything. The conscious black bar body is never contextualized.
Case.
You're not good.
Okay.
Yes, we saw confidential sources say even if they can have online blogging, those online blogs do not access people who want to be confidential. They say people can be anonymous. They have conceded our perception based on that that reporters do not know whether they will be subpoenaed, which means they are less likely to come out. It's obviously more likely that with reporting that they are able to spread their message that our YB evidence is only specific to investigative reporting, which is why even if they with this anonymity argument that have zero explanation of why those things actually have any sort of do anything or only are now the impact outweighs why the evidence was conceded through two speeches. It says that we are capable of resolving massive amounts of structural violence. There is zero. The idea that we are a chain of equivalence makes no sense. That that is overly utilizing the idea that we should not care about violence to other bodies besides black queer folk is clearly told too reductive. Now the method page I'm going for the cloudy evidence because it's an impact term to their alternative. The one NC said that they will never engage in politics. This is especially bad. Instead, you should view politics as a contingent point where that can be pressured for certain good. We don't have to win that the political is inevitably good. In fact, we can agree that the political is always bad. Yeah, we can still make certain changes in order to make it a little bit less bad. They have zero explanation how they can possibly engage in political structures, deal with people like Trump, even if they win. That the act sort of is not consistent with their ontological frame. You should ask yourself: would you go? You should ask yourself: is it worse for people for is the act worse or is Trump worse? Obviously, you can tell there's no footnoting. There's no footnoting. I'll get to the permutation cells out, which I'll get to later. It says we do both. Also, that footnoting thing is a new argument. in response to this, so you should scratch it off. Okay. Permutation default that shows no part of the affirmative means that you cannot have engagement in the ballroom. One error link explanation is just that it just boils down to the app doesn't do anything for black queer folk. I don't have to wing that I do anything because that's not necessarily footnoting because obviously the app's method cannot possibly explain everything. That was the pop's evidence, but we think that that the affirmative can explain some fonts, which is the reason that I have to answer their perm answers here. They say white floaty. There's no impact to that, and we impact with our evidence that we should instead be fluid in order to understand the way that different norms construct themselves. Now that they say that we're parasitics. How's it parasitics improve? Like poor folks' livelihoods. Obviously, the 2 error were just a bunch of buzzwords. Zero explanation of the impact of overkill. I don't have to win that I can explain overkill because the permutation solves it. When he didn't commit to any one framing for how structural balance operates, and said that we just have to win that. Can solve a search. But now the Gordon emphasis is not a double term because the 2 error literally said that they rely on sort of ontological frame. We think that's wrong. Instead, have the alternatives, even if they were right about their sort of pessimism claim, how do they possibly engage? How do we rectify those sort of structural claims they made? It's their alternative literally just says we do nothing and we sort of negotiate about those things, but they don't do anything. Instead, our Gordon evidence says you should engage in dealing with the social structures that create that balance in the first place.